Good afternoon, runners, and welcome to the NYRR Coaches Chats. I am Coach Steve, and I have my co-coach, Coach Ben Delaney, here with us. And today we're going to talk about all things training. So if you have a question for us, whether it's race strategy, what to eat, what to drink before your races, or you have questions about your upcoming training for any race, whether it is the United Airlines NYC half or maybe a smaller race in your local hometown, put those questions below because Ben and I are going to be taking those questions throughout the chat. And not only that, we want to know where you are watching from. It's always one of my favorite parts of the show to see where our viewers are watching from all over the country and also sometimes all over the world. So please let us know where you're watching from and any training questions you have in that chat. We're going to get to those one by one throughout the show. So Ben, we have a few topics we're going to review for our runners. We're going to talk about, as I said, training for the United Airlines NYC half, which is coming up really quick. Common running terms, it's a new year. A lot of people are out there getting their first foot out the door. So we're going to talk about some terms you might hear as a runner, and then cold weather running secrets. If you're in maybe the East Coast like Ben and I are, or you're up north somewhere, it is cold this morning. It was 15 degrees when I ran. Not fun, but if you dress properly out there, you can actually manage to get through those cold days to have a good, successful training season. So Ben, thanks for joining our chat. And I love your new jacket, by the way.
Yeah, I know these are our new coaches jackets that we just got. Thank you so much to New Balance, yourself, our partnership team, making this happen. To quote one of our looking pretty fresh here today in our new jackets. We have the dark blue. It says Coach right there. Our New Balance insignia on the side over there. But yeah, it's really good. These jackets are great. It's 2022. I think we're all hoping for a more positive outlook, and our coaches are looking good as we get this year started, Steve.
I love it. It looks great. And we'll go into our segment later on about how to dress for the cold weather, which I'm sure our coaches are liking the jackets and layering. But let's first talk about training for the United NYC half, because we are about 9 to 10 weeks out right now from that race. March 20th is going to come up faster than you think it is. So Ben and I do have our tips for training for this race. I'm going to start with the first one, which is follow a training plan. So if this is your first half or even your first United Airlines NYC marathon, I recommend following a training plan. If you don't know where to start, we have a great one. It's the NYRR Coaching Lab by Run Coach. It's dynamic. It has great coaching, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but also adjust to your training. So where you are now is not where you're going to be in 8-9 weeks. We're going to gradually get you faster, gradually get a little more healthier, a little stronger, and you have a coach there to help you out. It's also a great community of runners as well that'll help you succeed on there. So whatever your training is, a lot of training plans out there. Some are, we call them generic or static. So just say run 10 miles. But some are dynamic, like the Run Coach program, where it's going to adjust. So if you can't run 10 miles, you might run 8 or 9 or 12, which I like because it bases you off where you're starting from and going to get you to a healthy starting line, which is one of my favorite training plans. Ben, what about you? What is one of your tips for training for the United Airlines NYC half?
Yeah, I think when you're definitely training for a goal race of any kind, finding a coach or someone to help you along your journey is so important. So again, if you know somebody out there, if you have maybe a Facebook group, even if you live here in the New York City area, finding a coach is a great tip. They keep you accountable for what you're doing. They may be able to give you some advice, some tips, their experience in racing and training in general. Sometimes it's hard to figure out where I should just start. What is the first step, as some would say? Steve said, a lot of runners may be getting their foot out the door for the first time as a runner, or maybe they took an extended break during this pandemic period that we have. So again, if you have a coach out there that you know of, reach out to them, maybe a friend who's a runner who can point you in the right direction. Look for your local running communities also. I know Steve's part of a great running community out in his area in New Jersey, New York City, anywhere here in the 5 boroughs. You've got plenty of running communities to touch into, have coaches, experienced runners to help you along that journey, because having that community, having that accountability, having that person you can lean on and talk to and help you out is so critical, because it keeps you on track, keeps you motivated, especially as we're going to talk about later in these colder days. And if you're up here in the Northeast or in the North, to keep yourself motivated to get out or get on a treadmill to do your workouts, because sometimes just getting a little extra push, a little extra nudge, as Steve already touched on, having that plan, then you have that coach to kind of help you along with that, can be the steps that you need to keep you on track as you aim for either the United Airlines NYC half or any other spring marathon or half marathon on your calendar. So again, Steve, we have a training plan, we have a coach. What other a critical tip or helpful tip can you give our runners out there?
Then the next one I would say is train on the course when possible. So this is great if you're local to New York City or even the tri-state. Come out, run the course. Most of it you can run. You can run through Times Square. You can run up 42nd Street. You can run Central Park, obviously. You guys can't run on the FDR. You can run kind of next a little bit. You can't actually run on the FDR. You can do Manhattan Bridge, but you can't do the top level. Our race runs on the top level of the bridge, but you can run on the lower part. So you still get a nice elevation change. You can run Prospect Park, and you can also run down that big hill on Flatbush Avenue. So most of the course you can experience. Now, if you're not local, don't worry. Try to find hills that match where you live. So you're going to try to find a hill around mile 4 to 5 that's pretty significant to the Manhattan Bridge, for instance. Try to find maybe some rolling hills for the end of your long runs, so you can experience kind of what it's like going up Times Square, because it is uphill, and then going through Central Park a little hilly at that last part. Nothing too dramatic like Manhattan Bridge, but try to find something that matches the course elevation where you live. That way you come to the race as prepared as possible going into that race, Coach Ben.
Yeah, and that's so critical. And this past weekend, our weekend long run that we had, our runners were in Prospect Park. Again, as Steve alluded to, using our home course advantage, we're getting our runners on the course because you want to be familiar with, with that. And another thing that we talked to our runners about this past weekend that we had is what their goals are for this race, or any race they have on their calendar here in the winter or in the spring. Because again, if you have a training plan, if you have a coach, if you know the course you're going to be on, set that goal. That goal is going to help you, again, kind of align all those little dots, maybe align the stars, as one could say, to kind of figure out where you want to go with your race. Because again, it gives you, a finish line beyond the finish line of what you're going for. It gives you those small steps to go for, to achieve. So you see the small steps in training, because it's so critical. Sometimes when you're doing your training, you're not really sure where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do. But if you know what your end goal is, it could be a PR. It could be like, hey, I've run this race before. I know this course pretty well, that the conditions line up well, your training goes good. Maybe you want to push it. Maybe you want to go for it. Maybe just simply completing this race. Maybe it's your first half marathon. Heck, it's an automatic PR, as we like to always joke about. The first time you do a distance of any kind, it's an automatic PR, and you completed it, and you got a cool medal. That's the trifecta that you're going for. Maybe you want to beat a friend. Maybe it's a friendly wager you have, or just, whoever comes in first, the other person has to buy them brunch. Anything to keep you motivated, to give you a goal out there as you go through, are all good things you want to work with. Whatever those are, kind of work with those. And for runners that will be out there, whether it's you're going for a PR, having fun, going for a race, the NYRR Pace team will be out there with you on this race. Look for them. They'll have their hoop shirt, their hoop jerseys on. They'll have their sticks with their finish time. Lean on that crew. That crew is fantastic. They are amazing. They will help you achieve, or hopefully achieve, what your goals are. They essentially will do the race day work, because they point out where your hydration spots will be. They'll let you know when you're coming, as Steve talked about on the Manhattan Bridge, are those little inclines. They'll let you know how much further you have to go. They're going to make sure you're running even efforts to get you to where you want to be. So if you have that 2-hour goal, that's a big one for a lot of half marathoners for their first time out. Look for the pace team that's out there. They will help you achieve that. And what better way than to just kind of get out there and enjoy the views, have them do the work, you're following along, and before you know it, you're done. And heck, maybe you got free brunch coming from a friend you just beat.
I can't wait to run United Airlines anyways yet, Ben, so that I could get a free brunch from you. Just saying, I'm excited for that. Great. So once again, runners, if you're just joining, follow a training plan, find a coach, train on the course if possible. And once again, find out what your goals are. Ben went over right there. Let's see what shout outs we have. I think we have people from all over joining us, and I would like to see where you guys are watching from. So I'll go first. We have Dennis watching from New Jersey. I love the New Jersey people watching here. Right back in what part of New Jersey you in? Running the half marathon on February 23rd. Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Very good. Stephen or Stefan, Project 60. Hello from the UK. Well, it's probably afternoon there, almost dinner time. But Stephen, thank you for logging on. Appreciate it.
Next, we have Aaron saying, so excited. I've been trying for this since 2020. Haven't we all? Did New York City as your first marathon in November. We all a big help. Now it's time to start training for this. Aaron, it is one of my favorite half marathons in all of the country. I've done a lot of half marathons, and it is a spectacular race, which is why we're talking about it now to get excited for it. Congrats on New York City Marathon, and you're going to love the course coming up in March.
Monica from, hey, Belleville, New Jersey. New Jersey ripping strong today, Steve. I see that already. Looking forward to running the Manhattan 10K. That's first weekend of February, and the NYC half. Got to prepare for those hills. If you're doing the Manhattan 10K, you're already doing a loop of Central Park. That alone is not a flat course, so that'll definitely get you ready for the NYC half. Monica, great job.
And let's jump into our segment number 2, Ben. We'll come back to some questions. If you have any questions, please put those in the chat. We have a few hanging out there, but we're gonna come back to them. I want to talk about common running terms, Ben. So these are terms that we use as coaches. We might say, hey, go to warm up, but what does that really mean? What does a split mean? We're gonna dive deep into those. So you runners who maybe have not been around the running block or the running track too long, aren't confused out there, maybe your first group training workout at your first training plan. So keep these in your mind. These are also all on our NYRR.org site. So if you want to review those as well, you can check out the Running Resource Center, a great guide for all things running, and review these as well. So Ben, talk about what a warm-up is. We'll start there. What is a warm-up?
Yeah, a warm-up is what you want to do before you actually step into your workout. Why is a warm-up so important? Because you want to get the body moving, body flowing before you step into the harder efforts that you're going to do, especially on those speed days. The warm-up will consist of usually form drills. There could be some dynamic, there could be some stagnant, but again, it's getting the body warmed up, prepped and ready before you step into those harder efforts that you're going to be doing very soon in the workouts you have. Steve, what would a cool down entail?
Cool down is almost the opposite. Actually, we read an article about this right before this chat. I can't think of where it's from, but you're really cool. You did hard effort. So let's say you did some interval workouts or a tempo, which we'll go over those terms in a little bit. Your heart rate is really high and you want to lower it down. Otherwise, you're gonna get some blood that pools in your feet. Possibly you're gonna aid in recovery if you cool down. You're really just slowing that heart rate down. So once again, you're running at a slower pace. So if you did those intervals I'm gonna make up times right now at a 9 minute per mile, you're going to an easy 10, 11, 12 minutes, super easy, just a level 3 out of 10, just a nice jog about a half a mile just to cool that body off a little bit. If it's really cold outside, you can do it shorter and get inside because it's cold outside like it was this morning at 5:15 a.m. I didn't do any cool down. I just got inside because it's cold, but try your best. And when you're inside, do some breathing activities just to slow that heart rate down, slow it down gradually instead of automatically just stop working out. Ben, talk about strides.
Yeah, strides are a very important part of the warm up or even the cool down when you're done. They can be done on both sides. Usually at the end of a warm up, you may do a stride, and maybe at the end of the workout, you may do a stride. And they're both done for different purposes or reasons. The stride typically is a 50 meter or maybe like a 10 second or so, just increase in effort or pace as you kind of ramp up, and then you hit a certain stride. It's not a race pace. It's a comfortably hard effort that you want to do, and then you bring it back down again. And usually you're going to want to repeat this as a warm up. You maybe do it like 4 to 5 times. And as a cool down, maybe 3 or 4 times, depending on where you want to put it within within your workout. But again, the strides intended just to kind of open up your stride, open up the upper body using your arms a bit more. Again, because you're probably before a speed workout, you're going to want to get that blood rate, that blood flow up. The oxygen level is going a bit more, so the strides are very important. At the end of the workout, it could be used to help flush out some of the lactic acid you may have built up in your quads. So again, strides can be done before or after, and they're just simple accelerations to kind of raise the heart rate a little bit or help flush out some of that lactic acid. So Steve, the first thing we touch on in terms of like our interval, the speed workouts we have is a tempo run. So let's dive into what a tempo run is or what it looks like.
Yeah, tempo run. I mentioned this kind of when I talked about cool down, but tempo run, you're going to be running at a little faster effort for a sustained amount of time. So we're trying to vary our pace. So a lot of runners, what they do, especially new runners, you'll run one pace out there. No matter what it is, you're always running the around 9 minute per mile. Tempo run, we're going to go a little faster, a little bit harder for X amount of time so that we could run maybe for 50. When you're starting off, it could be a 10-minute run at a 7 out of 10 effort level. Ignore your pace, but just look at that effort level. So for 10 minutes, you're going to run a 7 out of 10 effort level, then bring it back down and cool off a little bit. And as you get more experienced, you might do that tempo run. Ben does great group training workouts with tempo runs on Thursdays, where it's a 30-minute tempo run at a level, it could be 7 or 8, I'm assuming out there with the runners, and they're bringing that level up. So the goal is by this, the more of those you do throughout the week or your month or training cycle, those paces become a lot easier. Your regular run becomes faster and everything becomes a little faster. Your race pace becomes faster, but you want to do them smart. You don't do back to back. You want to give yourself days of recovery because it is hard in the body, like all speed workouts, which we'll go over. You want to give yourself breaks after every tempo run and every speed work. Ben, we're going to talk about the fun one that I love saying. All the runners who are new to running think, what are we talking about? Fartlek. What is a fartlek, Ben?
A fartlek is a Swedish term for speed play. And trust me, any runner who says it, anybody who says it the first time, you always say it with a smile because it has that ever popular word in it at the very beginning. But yeah, fartlek is a great way to do speed work that's not so dialed in or exact. So what does that mean? Sometimes you got there for a workout, it may have you doing, and we'll touch on this in a second, 2x400s or 4x800s. Where a fartlek is, you may say, hey, I'm going to run from this park bench to that park bench. I'm going to increase the effort that I have and keep it for that, and then I'm going to slow it down again. And now I'm going to go from that blue car to that red car and pick up my effort again. One of the great workouts that some of our coaches have done in the past is it's called a color run, where you pick a color of your workout, and then every time you're out on your run, when you see that color, you pick up your effort until you see that color again. So instead of doing a very structured, 4x800, you're doing just when you see the color or the different areas that you've chosen to pick up your effort and bring down the effort to increase, to get in that speed work. So again, a fartlek is more about speed play. It's not so structured as I've got to do X, Y, and Z through the workout that I have. And it allows you, the runner, to the freedom. And some days that can be critical, especially in a training cycle of 8, 10, 12 weeks, where you just kind of want to let your mind wander and just kind of be there. This is a great workout to drop in on those days where maybe you're not quite feeling like keeping it up forever. And then again, so we talked about fartlek, Steve. Maybe on the fartlek you may have some hills or hill repeats. So talk about hills and how much fun those can be, Steve.
Hill repeats, you say it with a joke, but this is my favorite workout. I love hills. In races, I do really well with them. I think because a lot of my background comes from hills. And in Jersey, you have to run a hill, literally wherever you go, where I'm in Jersey at least. Hill repeats, there's different ways you can do it. The most simplest way is a hill repeat. So you find a hill that's not too big around your house, maybe takes 45 seconds to get to the top of, and you run that hill multiple times. A lot of times you'll do it at a higher effort level. So maybe a 7 out of 10 effort as I look back, once again, the speed work, RPE efforts. So you do maybe 4 hill repeats. You go up the hill, up is 1, you come back down to recovery, up is another 1, downhill recovery, 4 to 5 times at that 7 effort level. Or you could, I like the ones better as we talked about for training for the United Airlines NYC half. It's hill specific. So you're on your course, you're finding hills that are similar to the course of the hill you're going to run in. So you try to find, if you're doing the New York City Marathon, for instance, you're going to find a hill first mile of the long run, because in New York City Marathon, the hill is at mile 1. You're going to run that once, and then you're going to try to find another hill at mile 13 because the Pulaski Bridge is at mile 13. So you can be specific about it, or hill repeats, once again, up and down the hill as much as you can. The goal there for the repeats is you do it many times. In your race, you only got to do it once, which I love. It gives you a lot more endurance, a lot more strength through those hills, a little bit easier in your race. But the next one we spoke about a little bit, it's that by X symbol you might see in a workout. It might be the 4x700 or whatever it is. Let's talk about what that is.
Yeah, exactly. And if I'd known the hills were your favorite, I would have invited you to group training last night. We did a hill workout where we actually worked up the hill, crested it, and then we also worked down the hill. So hill repeats can be all kinds of fun stuff. But yeah, because like last night, we were doing hills. So we were doing 6 by hill repeats. So again, you have that 6, the X, and then something. Usually the number to the left of the X is the number of times you're going to do it. And the other side is what that repeat is going to be. So again, if you're doing 8 by 400s, you're going to be doing 400s. Yeah, you guessed it, 8 times. If you're doing hill repeats, it could be 6 by hill. So you're doing the hill 6 times. As Steve said, you can go up and you're going to recover down. Now, typically, when you're doing a workout with a by or number of times, there will be a hard effort, which is a repeat, and then the interval, which will be the recovery. Typically the recovery times may vary depending on what the workout you're going to be doing. So always read the instructions, or if you're working with a coach, ask them how long is the recovery, because the idea is when you're doing those by workouts, 8 by 400s, you're going to be doing those at a pretty intense or hard effort level, probably somewhere in your 7.5 to 8. So think about that upper, 5, maybe somewhere within the upper ends of your half marathon to your 5K effort, depending on what you're training for. So you're going to want to have a recovery period in between those to allow you to prepare for the next one. Because again, you want to make sure as you're going through those, your first repeat, your 1 of 8 is not your fastest, but you want that number 7 or number 8 of a repeat, or whatever the number may be, to be your quickest when you're going through. And that leads us to our next important thing, Steve, which are your splits. So as you're doing an 8 by 400, what would those be? And if a coach asks you, hey, how are your splits? What would you tell them or talk to them about?
Yeah, it's an interesting term. Splits can use a few different things. It's basically your time that you did for the workout or the race mileage. So it could be and the distance can vary. So in Ben's example, your split would be how long it took you to do that 800-meter repeat. It could be a mile repeat. It's going to be 5 minutes because it took you 5 minutes to do an 800-meter or 1,200-meter, whatever it may be. But your split could also be what your mile time was during a marathon. So my split for the first mile was 10 minutes. Or the 12th mile was 18 minutes. So you're going to look at what it was for that given distance. And that's usually a mile or kilometer time if you're using metric. That kilometer time as well as a split was going to be a smaller increment, like a 400-meter split, a few seconds, or longer, like a mile time. Ben, let's look at the course specific here. So we're looking at courses, one course, especially virtual races happen all the time. We talk about it, out and back course. What is an out and back course?
Yeah, it's just to specify you start at one spot and say you're your front door. You run out for either a distance or a time. You turn around and then you return or come back to where you started. This can be done, as Steve said, the virtual races. A lot of people were doing those in 2020. It's a great way because if you get out and back, maybe you stash some water along the way. It also gives you an endpoint on where to go, where to turn around, and where to come back. And maybe you pre-measured that out on Strava or in your car, or maybe it's a route that you run, with more frequency, and you know how far 4 miles is. But yeah, if you're looking for that, and it can also be done for workouts. For our tempo workouts, we typically do an out and back for different ways or different reasons. But out and backs can be great. I do them by myself when I'm doing my own runs. But outside of an out and back, Steve, we have what other course styles or course ideas can a runner do, whether on their own or with a group?
I love the looped course. So a lot of times there's two ways to do it. You can do one giant loop. Think of maybe Chicago Marathon. You start at Grant Park and you finish Grant Park. So you're doing one big loop around the city. So you can do one big loop, or it can be multiple loops. So I did a race one year in Prospect Park, marathon in Prospect Park. You did 9 loops, something like that in the park. We've done the New York 60K. Once again, how many loops is New York 60K? It's like 4 loops.
It's like 9 of the inner 4. Yeah, no, it's crazy.
So you do it's a many loop, which there are positives to that. You have crowd support every time, every mile 3 or every multiple times. It's easy for fans, but you're repeating yourself. Some people like that because you know what to expect. That hill is always coming up, but some people want to change in what you're doing. Which then point to point is that changing option where you don't repeat anything. Talk about that point to point.
Yeah, I think Steve loves a loop course. This is probably one of my favorite things about living in New York City is the point to point. Why? Because I can bring my Metro card and I can just run from my house or my apartment, and I can run anywhere in the city and pick up a subway train back up to where I live. That also allows me to feel I've gone further or farther when I'm doing my run. It also allows me a chance to maybe see some new areas or some new things that maybe I don't always get to. Explore a new location of the city that maybe I'm not familiar with, because I'm able to run. If I can do 10 miles instead of going out 5 and back 5, or finding a 5-mile loop or a 2.5-mile loop, I can simply run 10 miles from my front door to the nearest subway stop at 10 miles away, and maybe I've seen new places or new things. If you don't live by an area of mass transport, maybe you have your loved one, your child maybe learning to drive, you can have them come drive you, come pick you up, or maybe even drop you off 10 miles from home, and then you can simply run back. Point to points are great just as a variance. Also feel like you've gone a bit farther in your runs. So again, out and back, looped, point to point are all great options when training. Building them all in as you go through your training cycle is crucial, because again, it keeps things fresh and new. But obviously, after you've trained through all that, Steve, you're getting close to race day. Welcome to Taper Town. So let's talk about that a little bit for me, Steve.
Taper Town is a great place to be. Some people don't like it because you want to do more than you can do, but some people love it. But basically, you built your training up. It could be for any distance, but we usually refer to more for a half and full marathon. For a half marathon, the taper period is on average 2 weeks. Some might do 1, some might do 3 weeks. For a marathon, on average, it's about 3 weeks. Some might do 2-week taper, some might do 4-week taper. It's dependent on the training plan, the training person, the coach. But it's a period where you've gone through training, you've took the distance and the intensity, built it. You did your last long run. So once again, on averages, that marathon is about 20-mile long run on average. And that's your longest run you're going to do. It's just usually the peak mileage week you're going to do as well. And then those last 3 weeks, your distance and intensity is actually going to go down a little bit. So you go into that race very fresh and ready to go. And that taper is going to help also recover any injuries, whether it's big or small. You're going to help you just recover your body for the long enduring haul you're going to do for your long distance race. Ben, let's talk about cross training. What is cross training for runners?
Yeah, cross training is a crucial piece. Something that I didn't really learn until later in my own running and athletic career, and how important it is. Cross training is something other than running. I know, shocker, runners can do something other than running. It's hard sometimes, but it's important because you want to be able to train your whole body to be ready. Running is a very linear sport. We run one direction, use the same set of muscles continuously all the time. We have a very complex body to work with. So you want to make sure that you're exercising all the muscles in our body, especially your core, your glutes, that upper thigh to that lower rib cage area. That's that drive that you're going for. And while running will emphasize that, there's also muscles in the lower body, in your ankle, your foot, that don't necessarily get the work that it needs. So the cross training that you're doing is crucial to keeping yourself strong, but more importantly, injury free. So when you cross train on those days off, or even if you're injured, sometimes cross training can be very important. And cross training can be simple as body resistance work. It can be squats, it can be lunges, planks, push-ups, bench dips, anything at home you may have. It could be jump rope. It doesn't have to be anything super taxing, super hard. Depending on where you're working your cross training in, it could be something you do lightly on one of your off days. Yoga, Pilates, those are all also good cross training things that you can go with. But incorporating that within your overall training structure is crucial, because it can help with building the body and make it stronger, so you can run further, faster, but also keep you hopefully injury free. Never a guarantee. This is also where a coach may come into play, because they may be able to kind of slot things in where you're supposed to be, and that training plan that Steve had talked about. Because then on this day I'm doing this day I'm doing this, and all those important things to go through. So we've gone through taper, we've gone through cross training. One of the core pieces of our own training, Steve, is how you train or what you train by, and we for RPE. So I want to dive into that a bit, Steve.
RPE is a term we've used already during this talk right here, Ben, and it's a term, rate of perceived exertion. So it's how you're feeling out there. It's a great way to measure kind of your training. So a lot of people use this instead of maybe a pace or a mile time or a goal time. And you think of it as a 1 to 10 scale. A run meaning I am walking or I'm standing. The lowest effort you can put into something. And a 10 is your most exerted effort. So it is a very fast run, a sprint sometimes, and you're going to gradually do your workout the work is going to be dependent on what the workout is. So your everyday easy run is about a 4.5, 5 in between there, where you're really not breaking a sweat. It's so easy. It's a recovery run. And then, you're going to do your hard workouts, like we said earlier. It's that 7, 8, maybe some 6s early on. Those hard workouts you gradually build up. And then your race paces are also built into those. So your marathon pace, probably around a 6, 6.5, 7. Your half marathon pace a little bit higher. Your 5K pace, that higher RPE, and gradually, so you can really figure out what you're doing. What I like about this is it doesn't affect your terrain you're running on. So if you're doing a hill, your pace is going to slow down, but your RPE is going to always be the same. So if your RPE, you're doing a 7 for that day on that hill, your RPE is going to stay at 7. Your pace is going to slow down, but you're putting the same effort into it. And it also doesn't affect weather conditions. It could be a super windy day. You're still putting the same effort into it, even though your pace is a little bit slower. Ben, talk about what a difference between a negative and a positive split is as it refers to your races.
Yeah, the negative and positive split when you look at your race is so important, because people the gun goes off and so do you, and you just take off as fast as you can, and you go as hard as you can for as long as you can, and then slowly, and then throughout the race your pace begins to slow, and all of a sudden your times go up instead of down. So you look at what we look at in our races when we train with the runners that we have, is you want your first miles to be your slowest, meaning that you're working into your race. That way, when you get to the end of your race, you feel strong. You still feel like you have something left in the tank, gears left to tap into, to increase the effort, increase your pace, to go quicker, meaning you're going to get faster or going to be negative from where you started. So instead of starting like here and finishing way up here, you want to tip those scales. You want to start here and finish here. So you're looking at if I start off at a 10-minute mile, I'm just kind of cruising through. Maybe my first few miles are going to be around that 10 to 9:50 range. But then towards the end of my race, I'm at 9:30, 9:15. It's because when I was here in my race, I was conserving my energy and my effort enough that I was able to pick up my speed at the end of the race and finish stronger. Everybody likes to be the one passing somebody on those final straights, not being passed. So think about that when you're out there. And it's hard. You have to kind of dial into what the effort feels like Steve talked about. Yesterday, we were doing our hill repeats in Central Park. It was cold, harder than it probably would have on a day that wasn't 5 degrees. If it had been in the 40s, you may have felt a bit differently. Same thing goes on your race day. dial into the effort. That way, when you start off your race, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm hanging here, I'm hanging here. I'm getting faster, getting faster, getting faster. And then when you look at your Strava map or your Garmin map or whatever tracking you do, you'll see this nice downhill, which means you're getting faster and faster and faster. Maybe it's uphill. I don't know which way Strava goes these days. But the important part is you finished the race faster than you started. That's what you're going for, because you want the negative split, not a positive split. Because sometimes if you have a positive split, Steve, what happens to runners out there on the course?
Then you do what happens, hit the wall, or some people call it bonking. I think that's more of a cycling term, but it's one of the two. And this is a term you don't want. This is one of the ones in this list you actually don't want to do. You try to avoid it, or you try to just push it back as far as you can. What this term refers to as if you look at marathons or half marathons, you get to a point where your glycogen or your carbohydrates run out in your system, or you went out too fast, as Ben mentioned with the splits. Your body feels like you can't go any farther. The body feels like you got to mile 22. And here's your body, and there's an invisible wall, and you ran into it, and you're walking. You want to avoid that as much as possible. And a lot of times it comes down to pacing. You went out too fast, or your nutrition and your glycogen storage is all gone. So if you focus on those, you want to push that, once again, push that wall back to 24, 25, or you don't hit it at all. Half marathons, those really good athletes don't even hit the wall at half marathons, because it usually happens once you get that 2.5 hour mark. But once again, it can happen if you go out pacing wrong. It can happen early on. As well as your nutrition's on pace. You can do it in many different races out there. Ben, let's talk about the difference between a net time and a gun time, which a lot of runners will see in our races and the results. You see both of those. So what is the difference between net time and gun time?
Yeah, gun time is just that. If you have a race that has a gun or an air horn or some sort of starting for the mass wave, but everyone goes off, that is your gun time. That means when the clock on the race starts. Now, you may not have crossed the start line yet, but the gun time clock has started. So if you ever see a gun time, that is the actual physical running time of the entire race from beginning until the final finisher that comes through in the finish line. Now, the net time is the time that you cross the start line. Usually there's either a chip in your bib or somewhere on your body that trips a device that lets you know that Ben Delaney has crossed the start line at this point. And then when I finish the race, it stops. That's my net time. That's my time on course, not the overall time of the race. So again, the gun time is when the air horn gun goes off and the race starts, whatever that may be. And that is for the entire field, where the net time is my physical time when I cross the start line and then I cross the finish line of that race. And obviously before a race starts, I'm hanging out in a corral. So Steve, talk about what a corral is and how much fun that can be on a nice 5-degree day for a runner.
Those who ran the NYRR Fred the Bow race in the past know that it is usually cold that day, and the standing in the corral is not fun. But the corral is a place you got. It's in front of the start line or behind the start line. Maybe in front of the start line, and runners are lined up there. Sometimes it is a smaller race. It's very informal. You just line up. At my races here in Jersey, it's all right. Who's running faster than 7 minutes? And you put up your hand and you go to the front of the line. 8 minutes is back there. 9 minutes. Usually it's the faster people up front, and the slow people in the back. It's just a way to organize yourself. New York Road Runners, those corrals, as we know, close before the start. There's so many runners out there that usually have to be in your corral by a certain time. And with Road Runners, what that means is on your bib, it'll say corral F. And you look for F with all the signs. You go to F and you can go in there. You show your bib to the start volunteer, and that is your start corral. Most races, you can move back corrals. You just can't move forward. And those runners in your corral are basically yours. So it's that 2-hour marathon time, 9:09 per mile. That is those people, that average time of that corral, if it all works out the way it's supposed to be. And then finally, we finish the race. We go through what's called a shoot. What is the shoot at the end of the race?
The shoot it's a big parachute that drops on you at the end of the race. No, okay. The shoot is what you come through at the end of the race. The race is done. You've crossed the finish line. Yeah, you're done. It feels great. This is the area after the race we kind of walk through. And this is like a walk off or a shoot, whatever you want to determine this. It typically, depending on the race, you may pick up a medal or some other post-run souvenir at this point, or maybe even a post-recovery bag that may have some food or hydration or something to help you with your recovery process as you walk through. There could be volunteers in there as well, just kind of checking out and see how people are. Because depending on the distance of the race, the climate you may be running in, they want to have eyes on people coming through. So the chute is kind of where you walk through after you're done with the race, on your way exiting the race at some point, whether it could be, I've done some smaller races in different parts of the US. Sometimes the finishing chute is all of 10 feet and you're on your own. The bigger races, if anyone has done the New York City, TCS New York City Marathon or the United Airlines NYC Half, Those finishing shoots are much longer because obviously there's more runners that are going through, and they are kind of helping guide you to a point to keep the flow going. Because when you've got 25,000 of you and your closest friends moving through, they want to keep everyone kind of going through to a finishing point where they can spit you out onto a place where you can go off into your day. But yeah, it's kind of very where you walk through, you're kind of collecting yourself. You may get a heat sheet if it's really cold. You'll get a recovery bag of some kind, depending on the races that you're going to. But it's kind of also a chance for you to kind of collect yourself, reflect for a moment. Give yourself a high five. The finishing shoot, you've done it. I mean, that's always the good part. You've crossed the finish line and you're all done. So I think anything else that we've forgotten here, Steve? I think we covered it all. I think we did pretty good there.
I think that's it. We got so many questions during this chat, Ben. I want to jump over to questions. Okay. I want to jump in. Yeah, there's a lot of good questions. We have a question from Amy and Shauna. They're very similar questions. I don't address them. I know you guys have been waiting for these. We're going to look at Amy's here, and Shauna will address you because it's similar topics. Amy says, do you have to show proof of vaccination when you have medical issues and cannot get vaccinated to the races? So Amy, to answer your question, we're going to put a link in the chat if it's not there ready to our vaccination page on a website. It's going to share all the information. This is answered on that section of the page. Basically, the short story of it is you need to email, I think it's forms@nyrr.org about 72 hours before the event. So you keep that timeline in your mind. So if you're doing, the Fred the Bow coming up 72 hours before that, about 2 days, give it more time. I would say maybe if you have that medical exempt ready, give it a week, and you can email and they'll give you the instructions to follow. And then when all runners go to pick up their bibs, whether it's at the run center or the expo, you'll have certain, that email will show that you've provided medical issues or religious exempts is another one that's allowed as well. But email that forms@nyrr.org at least 72 hours ahead of your event. Amy, but great question. And then Ben, I'll let you jump in. Shauna's here. They're just related. So Shauna says, can you address the proof of COVID requirements? Where and when do we show that proof? My first NYRR race since COVID will be the upcoming Manhattan 10K.
Yeah, great question, Shauna. And it's Shayna, I believe. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name, but yeah,
sorry.
It's very important that usually when you come to pick up your bib, you will show your proof of vaccination. If you're coming to the run center, which I will strongly encourage our runners to set a time, come to the run center to get your bib. Please do not wait until race day. Make every effort to get to the run center to get your bib during race week, to pick up your, the swag, a shirt, a hat, whatever it's going to be. But when you walk into the run center, they will ask you, if you're here to pick up your race bib, you say yes. They will then put you into a queue where the first thing you will do is you will show them your COVID vaccine card. You're going to have the physical card or any one of the numerous apps that are out there. As long as you show you have proof, they'll check your ID to make sure it is you and what you're showing. Once you've shown that, you're good to go. Then you go down, you'll pick up your race bib, the race swag, and away you go. At the current time, we are requiring this for every race you will be going to. So if you did the Joe K 10K this past weekend, you're doing Fred the Bow, you're doing the Manhattan 10K, the Gridiron 4-miler, the Al Gordon 4-miler, yes, at the current time, you will have to show proof of vaccine at every time you pick up your race material. So just be prepared for that. The run center staff will get you in and out of there very quickly. I grabbed my stuff last week. I was in and out in less than a minute. Just have it all ready to go when you walk in the door, and you'll be good to go.
Nice. Next one from Denise. Was the United half route confirmed? Great question, Denise. We're trying to get that on our site. We're still working with a few city partners and the city planning organizers to just figure out exact, we want to make sure it's 13.1 miles. So with construction and things that happened, we want to make sure we have the route confirmed before it is on the site. So just keep an eye out on that race website as we update it throughout the next month or two.
Jossie's always chiming in with questions. She's always here. What is one workout that you'll recommend which increase strength and stamina together? I will give my idea, Steve, but I'm curious to hear what yours is. Hopefully I don't take yours, because actually last night our hill workout is a great strength building and stamina building workout. Why? Because hills require you to increase that leg lift, that turnover. So it's going to build strength when you're going up, and those short intervals will build the stamina as well. But I know there's other ones. Steve, do you have I hope I didn't take yours. I know hills was in the fresh in my mind, but do you have another one? Maybe you can help with Jossie here.
No, I think it's a great quote. But Jossie, you also have the 7 days a week. So if you're trying to combine them for efficiency, they are two different parts. You work in two different efficiency parts of your body. So if you can spread them out, I think it's a little bit better. Avoid injuries. Hills are great. I do think tempo runs are great because you're getting that stamina out there and you're on your legs for a lot. You're along your legs for a harder workout for a longer time than normal. So tempo runs, fartleks are also kind of a good way to build that up. But once again, those intervals are key. Those build that strength as well. So make sure you get as much in as possible. 2 days a week is great for speed workout, speed endurance, and then the long run as well as ideal schedule. But great question. Next question we have from Denise. I'm having issues with paces, seem to run at one pace. Any recommendations? Denise, I find, we talked about this a little bit earlier. It is something so that a lot of runners experience. You run that one pace. Look at that RPE, maybe work with the coach or a running group. So, Ben, group train is a great example. If you're in the New York City area, you can sign up for the session and start. You can still sign up for the current session. Work with different pace out there. So one day you're going to do your warm up, of course, but you're going to focus on that RPE effort. So it's going to be that 7 out of 10 for just try it a little bit of time, just for 5 minutes. See how that feels. It's going to be uncomfortable the first time you do that higher RPE level, that 7, 8 out of 10. It seems like very uncomfortable, but you can sustain it. You're breathing heavily. And then cool down after that, and try to rest for a few seconds or a few minutes and then do it again. So it's almost like a fartlek with your RPE. And just play with that a little bit. And then the next day you want to recover. So do that 4 out of 10 effort level. And then next day, try something else. So play with that different effort level. Don't look at your pace, look at your effort level. Because if you run up in a hill, I don't want you to try to stay with that 9 minute per mile through that hill or a downhill or uphill. Stay with that effort level. And that will in turn adjust your pace in the long run. So focus on your effort and play with those throughout the week on your different runs.
Love that. Ruby selected to run the NYC half marathon. I got some injuries, went to defer 2033. I'm going to do that. Let me know, coaches. Thank you for always being great. Yeah, I think if you go in and you cancel the entry that's in there, that will, again, you'll be able to defer. Understand if you do defer, you still will have to pay the registration fee for 2023, but you can defer. Just simply cancel the entry within your dashboard, your NYRR account, and you will be good to go. Sorry, Ruby, to hear about the injuries. It's just kind of, unfortunately, as hunters, that's part for the course with us sometimes. Hopefully the injuries are not too bad. Hopefully we'll see you back out there running in the spring and have many races on your calendar moving forward. But all the best, Ruby.
And the next one from Greta, are 10 weeks enough to train for half marathon? Great question. Yes, 10 weeks is I would say, typical for most runners. It is standard. A lot of training plans you see for half marathon are 10 weeks. Some will do 12, some might do 8, but 10 weeks is great. It gets you about 8 weeks of training because then what you do, the 2 weeks of taper, which I talked about earlier and what that definition was. So it's great. Make sure you just get the long runs in, focus on those, and you have recovery as well. And maybe 1 or 2 speed works, depending on where you are in your running career. Try to get at least 1 speed work in there per week. That's going to help just your regular runs as well. 10 weeks is great.
Luke, on my long run, my calf was cramping and now it's sore. Any recommendations for a sore calf recovery and strengthening? Yes, it's cramping up. This could be an issue with hydration beforehand, but typically in the lower muscles like that, it's something to watch out for. If you have a foam roller or any kind of rolling device, when you're done, I would roll out for sure. More importantly, I would recommend after your runs. You want it to stretch after the runs, whether it be a long run or one of your effort-based runs. You always want to stretch a warm muscle, not a cold hustle. We also talked about the warm-up. I think a good warm-up here will also help because, again, you're getting the body kind of in motion and flow, getting the blood flowing a little bit. So depending on what kind of, on your long run, it could just be doing some simple strides at the beginning of your run to kind of open your stride up, get the blood flowing a little bit will help because possibly the cramping is just happening from that right there. But I would recommend, doing some stretching after the run for sure. If you have a foam roller, I would definitely roll out afterward as well. Again, not directly on the cramp, but around it, kind of work through that. In terms of strengthening, I would look at maybe some one-legged exercises because you could have just some lower leg issues going on there, some imbalance. Because if you're having cramping on one side and not the other, just could be one side stronger than the other. Something to keep in mind out there for Luke. But yeah, try those out. Come back in a week or so. We're back here and let us know how you're doing, and hopefully things are going in a better way for you, Luke. But thanks, great question.
Andrea says NYC Half Expo dates. Great question. So the race is March 20th this year. The expo is usually 3 days before that. So look at March 17th, 18th, 19th. Time, unsure what the times are, the hours are. Location, I'm not sure what that is. So that's probably the dates of them. So keep your calendar clear for at least one of those dates. Because as you know, for our marquee events such as the United Airlines, NYCF, everyone has to pick up the race bib themselves. There's usually no proxy pickups. And unsure about any COVID vaccination proof for this time or what the policy is. So keep an eye on the website, and we will make announcements closer to the race.
Monica, I would like to increase my speed. Any suggestions? Well, Monica, if you have been part of the chat today, we talked about fartlek and tempo and hill repeats and different interval workouts. That's how you increase your speed, because what you want to do is when you're doing your, if you have a training plan or you're doing the workouts, I think Steve touched on it in a question just a little while ago, when you're adjusting the RPEs, you're adding what's called the new stress to your body when you're going through there, and your body will adapt to that stress. So when you play with your RPEs, like usually we go off for our regular run, it's very conversational. If you're running with a friend, you should be able to talk pretty comfortably with that. When you're doing your speed workouts, talking becomes less easy, less, as much more of a chore, as one would say, because you're increasing your effort so much that your body can't, form words, because it's trying to just keep you breathing the entire time you're going through there. And that's what you're doing with your speed, your speed work. And the speed work should be, depending on what you're doing, can be short and more intense, like an interval or a hill repeat, or it can be a longer sustained, like the tempo run that Steve was talking about at the first part of our of the chat today. So those are the different kinds of speed you work with. It's very important to note that you don't build speed and distance together. Those are separate pieces. So don't go out and run your long run hard or fast. Your long run should be comfortable and somewhat conversational, depending on the race you're training for. Your speed days, that's where you're doing like 8x400s or hill repeats or tempo. Those will have a very distinct speed portion of the workout, and that's where you build your speed and you build your distance on the weekends. And then we talked about before, when you taper down, your body then magically joins these two together. So when you show up on race day, you're recovered, your body's feeling good, and you take all that speed, all that endurance, you marry it together, and then you go out and you run the best race that you trained for. Hope you have a great day. So yeah, increasing the speed is all about, one day focusing on that, whether it's a fartlek, the workouts you have, you go through, you kind of building, playing with those speeds a bit, and those increased and decreased RPE levels. So have fun with that. I love a good speed workout.
I believe our last one for right now, we got Jana asking, what's the weather generally like during the month of March in NYC? The United Airlines NYC half will be my first race in New York City. Where are you coming from is my first question, because obviously coming from Florida is different coming from Washington. But the weather is normally, it's chilly. It's March in New York City. It's still kind of wintertime. It's been, sometimes it snowed in the race, but sometimes it's semi-warm. So if run in all weathers, and all types of weather, so you're prepared for all types of weathers. Once again, depending on where you live. Years past, I've always gone usually tights and a long sleeve shirt, and sometimes start off with a hat and gloves. I may shed those. I may keep them for Manhattan Bridge, sometimes windy, 42nd Street, sometimes windy. But just practice in all types of weathers. But once again, usually, I don't know, between 20 and 35 degrees Fahrenheit, I guess, is a good average. I know it's like a big average, but I'd say around there is a good number to hit. And once again, those are Fahrenheit. So it is chilly, but you'll warm up out there. So always remember that it's about 10 degrees warmer when you're running than what it is when you're not running. Cool. Ben, let's go into our next segment here, last segment, and then I've definitely, we'll go to shout outs a little bit there. We'll come back to those. Let's go to talk about running in cold weather secrets. Because once again, this morning, Ben, where you were and where I was, it was 5 a.m. It was 15 degrees. Yesterday, I group trained for your runners and coaches. It was very similar. So some tips. So I'll give you two quick ones. I'll let you jump in here. For me, definitely cold weather running secrets, run by effort. We talk about this a lot, but especially with cold weather, it's sometimes thinner air, so it's harder to breathe. So sticking to a pace range is really tricky. So running by effort is going to make it a lot easier. And then layer as it gets cold. Ben's got on a great jacket. Now it's somewhat thin, but layering is very important. I like that jacket because, Ben, as you said, it gives room for layering. It's not already tight. You can layer. Usually this morning I did a base layer, a technical shirt, a vest, and then a jacket over that with ski gloves and a hat. So really try to layer as much as possible, because then you can also shed the jacket. I overdressed actually this morning. You can actually shed the layers as it gets warm out there. So that's definitely my two quick tips. Ben, what about you for those winter runs?
That's crazy, Steve. Were you going for a run, or were you trying to go to the North Pole? That's a lot of clothes on, but I hear you, because we were bundled up last night too. So, and again, layers is crucial. So it's a great idea. A couple other real quick points here. Treadmill. if you have access, yesterday morning would have been a fantastic day for the treadmill. We had a couple of runners actually joke with us in our Facebook group that yes, they were on the treadmill and it was not so cold. And yeah, if you have a treadmill, especially, and obviously if the conditions outside are not safe, I mean that there's ice, sometimes people, depending on where you are, maybe the roads are not going to be plowed or cleared before when you get up in the morning. So it's just not smart to get out there. So again, treadmill is good, but if you do go outside, if you do have the opportunity to do that, or you choose to do so, just make sure it's safe, make sure it's plowed. I always tell people in certain conditions, usually below 30 degrees, if it looks like water, it is water. If it looks like a dark asphalt, it's going to be slick. It's going to be probably icy. And the minute you hit that, you are not going to be in control, and hopefully things end well. So again, if you do go outside, look for safe footing. I know a lot of people, they use different kind of, devices on the bottom of their shoes, or they have trail running shoes. But again, always, make the best call if you are going to be going outside. If not, if you have a gym or a treadmill at home, sometimes it's, safety is always first. And while the treadmill might not be as exciting, we're on, a podcast, maybe power watch through a couple of episodes of your favorite show on Netflix. And before you know it, you've banged out a 60-minute run on the treadmill and off you go to the shower. But again, if runners do go outside, Steve, what are a couple more tips that we can toss their way for safety?
Yeah, it's dark now, guys. It's unfortunately dark until like sun comes up at, I don't know, 7 a.m. and then it goes down again at 5 p.m. So a lot of our runs, unfortunately, unless you're running in the middle of the day, thankfully it's warm out then too. But it is dark. So you're investing now, especially in reflective lights. Ben mentioned safety, and it's important because cars don't see you. Where I live in Jersey, is actually not many street lights. If you know Jersey, you might know where that is. Not many street lights out here. We have gas lights. So as a driver, I usually don't see pedestrians out there or cyclists. And so I always keep that in my mind when I'm a runner. So I have a light up vest. I have shoe lights, but you can also do headlights. You can do reflective gear, and that a lot of running gear, thankfully these days, does have reflective gear on it, but you need more than just the gear, the reflective gear. So think about lights, there's a lot of different options. Once again, headlamps, shoe lamps, ones you hold, ones that are on your body. How are you going to stay alert out there? Because you want the driver to see you out there for sure. And then the last one for me, Ben, is definitely set a rule no matter what. So if the weather is above X degrees, you're going to run outside. So if it is above 20 degrees, and this is going to vary for everyone, if it's above 20 degrees, you're outside. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But if it's below 20 degrees, you're going to hit the treadmill. I think that's it's kind of a good set rule to keep going. So you motivate yourself to stay outside through these hard winter months.
I think it's safe to say, Steve, we all have that friend that's like one way or the other. It could be 0 and they're like, come on. Or it's below 50 and they're like, no way.
It's all personal, but yeah, no, I agree with that. I was out once at 15 degrees this morning. I made it happen, but we do have some shout outs that I want to get to before we wrap this up, Coach Ben. First off, we have coming in shout outs from Martina, came earlier. Martina from South Carolina, running the NYC Marathon in November. A long time to train. Thank you for joining us today.
Love it. Katie, hoping to get charity event for NYC this fall. It will be my first, coming in hot from Texas. Thank you so much, Katie, and best of luck getting that charity.
Joanne from Ireland, I think first international runner that we've seen today. Thank you so much for watching.
Yuri from Staten Island. Hello, Staten Island. Thanks for joining in today.
We have Alexandria from Brazil. Me and my wife are going to run in the NYC half in March. Welcome, and please come to us, say hi to us if we're at the expo. We're usually around somewhere. Me and Ben are wandering around with our other coaches. Come say hi to us at the expo. We'd love to meet you.
Roberto, all the way from Barcelona, Connecticut. For if you know that, it does actually exist in Connecticut, and that's where Roberto is hiding out today, listening to us. Always love it when Coach Roberto gives us a shout out from that enclave of Barcelona, Connecticut.
And then we have Vic Mara. I'm forever volunteer 13 miles. Thank you so much for volunteering. Our races cannot happen without volunteers, as all runners know that. So thank you so much for being there on the course with us through the heat and the cold months. I'm sure you've been out there. And I believe that is the last shout out. So Ben, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge with the runners on today's chat. And runners, thank you for joining us on our chat today. Good luck to those training for the United Airlines NYC Half Marathon, which is about 9 weeks away. It's coming up faster than you think. But we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks a lot.